Fantastic presentations by both of you, and a lot of memories were brought back of what you showed. So I have a common question to both of you. Both showed influence of Correa sir in your thinking, in your philosophy, but and you showed your own work. And given the fast pace of things that we are living in a very fast track age. So how easy or difficult it is to convince your client in terms of what was your first idea and how it gets built. So how do you find it's difficult to get the exact design fidelity done the way it was visualized, and what are the challenges?
Yeah, I'll answer that quickly. When I did my first project, which I fell in my lap literally, I did a design. I said I'd take 15 days to Mr. Kirloskar, and within 10 days the design was ready. I was very sure of what I'm going to do when I saw the program and all. So you need to be sure what you're going to do, and it has to come from bottom of your heart. So for me, it is that way. The experience, I work on it. I look at everything, and I did the design, and then I presented it. All the Kirloskar were sitting, but five of them were sitting, and also Nanjundaya. So I was a little nervous, and I didn't have a team at all. This is all I did, and two of the friends who was working still with Korea, they would come and work for me in the night, and they would, So we did a model, we did presented it, and after presentation, I said, "This is Mr. Shelar, please wait outside." And I went out, and about half an hour later, Claire, who was Vikram's executive assistant, she calls me. She said, "Now you can go in." So I was wondering, the whole thing is going to change or what is going to happen. And because then they looked at it and she says, we looked at it and says, there is one little, Vikram was saying that, there's only one request, don't change anything. He says. So what a great thing to, as a young architect, trying to put his foot forward, to have those kind words. And that is how I think we approach. You have to be you have to be within you. You have got to be confirmed that this is what I want to do, and then you have to convince client. I think I have seen that in Bidhan Bhavan, in Jawahar Kala Kendra, and several other projects. Charles 100% convinced that this is what I want, and he never budged. She talked about integrity. That's where the integrity comes in. We got to be absolutely sure that this is what I want to do. I think you get Sachin.
Yeah. So I have a very simple formula for this. Like I said, like I'd shown earlier, it's not so easy to convince any clients. But clients are no fools. They know what they want. So what I do as an architect, I try to fulfill all the requirements, the list of requirements which they give us, because finally they are going to use that building. I'm not going to stay there, or I'm not going to use the building. So if I cannot fulfill those requirements, that means it's incomplete. So I take it very seriously, that all requirements have to be fulfilled. They have to be there. There's no compromise unless, it's something more than what can be fitted on a site. But as far as possible, I try to do that. Once that is under control, the second thing I do is how to put them together is, I give priority to that. Now, if I feel that, okay, the building has to be ground plus one, then I somehow manage to do it in ground plus one, and for that, whatever is needed, I do it. Now, the most important thing in this is, of course, I don't try to cramp in everything. Because there are many other factors which play a very important role. Like I was telling somebody, one of the students, that I feel that scale plays a very, very important role in architecture, and it is something which is perceived subconsciously by people, because everybody doesn't understand proportions and all that. But if the scale is right, I'm sure people just sense it, that, there's something nice about the building. So that is one of the very strong features in my design, I would say, where I concentrate on scale, like this building. The scale plays a very important role here, where when you enter, you see like almost a double light space where the light is coming in, and then you walk through an arcade and you come to a low space and things like that. And that is very important. And when you do it consciously, it just adds to the architecture. So imagine a combination of all this along with the requirements which are fulfilled, it doesn't take time to convince the client. And lastly, I would say, I mean, just to keep a cross check on what you're doing, uh, there's one very important question which you should ask yourself is this required? Now, whenever you draw a line, it means it's a wall, or it means that it's a step, or it means something. In architecture, a line is extremely important because each line means something. Now, if you draw extra lines, it's not going to help. So the only question you should ask yourself when you draw a line, is this required? If you don't have an answer for that, that means it's not required. And you remove those lines. What remains is something, I would say, very pure, and that is what sort of convinces you that, okay, you have a reply for everything and this is what you want. Then you can face the client and you have answers to all their queries or whatever, because you are convinced that you've removed all those extra lines and what is remaining is extremely important for the project. So that is how you sort of design and then you face the client.
Hi Sachin, a question for you. We know that you have done the extension for the Portugal project, the Champali Mall Center, and also doing some extensions for Ayuka. So how is it, what's the experience of building next to a Korea building? I mean, already existing legacy building and you're building right next to it. So what's the experience and the process for that?
Yeah, I mean, this was a real opportunity for me, to design a building next to my next to a building which is designed by my mentor. I mean, it's such a fantastic thing because it's happened outside India. It's in Portugal, where the research center was already designed by Charles, and there was a little bit of plot which was remaining when I got this phone call out of the blue from Portugal saying, after 10 years after the building was built, after Charles had designed that research center, I get this call and they tell me that, we want you to design a hospital next to this building. Can you do it? Now it is almost similar to Sunil's experience where this project from nowhere, it just falls into my lap. And so I took some time to recover from this, and I said yes, of course. But there's so many talented architects in Lisbon itself. Oh, forget Portugal. I mean, Lisbon has so many talented architects. I mean, anybody can design that building for you. And I have never designed a hospital. So I asked them, have you seen the buildings designed by me? So which I don't know. I'm sure they haven't. But they somehow trusted me, or they thought that maybe I was the only person who could design a building which would have the same quality as what the other buildings, existing buildings have. And they were very proud of that building, the existing building. So they said, no, I mean, we're sure that you can do this building. And why don't you come to Lisbon, next week? So I go there. And obviously, I mean, it was very obvious that this building had to look like a building which always existed, or it was always planned along with the other buildings. It couldn't have been a building which looked completely different from the rest. But then it had a different function altogether. It was a hospital, whereas the other building was a research center. Also, this was on a very narrow plot. I mean, the buildings which were designed were on a much larger plot by Charles. It was a triangular plot, and this was like a rectangular thing which was, touching it, which was being used for parking. So, so I was given that plot, and so the building obviously had to be quite linear and long. So, yes, trying to merge the building wasn't difficult for me because I had worked on the earlier project as well. But trying to fit in all the requirements into that narrow space and doing something, better than that, instead of just making it into a box full of requirements, that was the difficult part. That was the challenge, which I was, with my experience in Korea's office and all, probably it was easier for me to handle a big project because, as you know, you were there in the office. We had an extremely small office. Even Korea's office, the strength was just 8 people. I mean, out of which 3 were seniors and Rest 4 or 5 were like absolute juniors, so fresh out of college. So that was the strength of that office, and doing huge projects. So for me, I mean, it was that way. I mean, I was quite confident about. I mean, I was not scared of the size of the building. So the only thing which was important also was it shouldn't look like a copy of that building. Externally, I mean, of course, it has to resemble the building. The same language has to continue, but from inside, it had to look different. And how to do that was the main challenge for me. Apart from, of course, knowing a little bit about hospitals and all that. Um, Having said that, I mean, there was another challenge over there because, just like how the research center was designed, we had consultants for that. So my job was to design the building as a bare shell. Then there was a consultant from the US. It was a very big firm which called HDR, who were doing only hospital projects, and they're doing like 10 times bigger projects in China and all that. But this was their first project in Europe, so they were sort of they agreed to work on this. Otherwise, it was not feasible for them to work on it. And then we had a local architect who was going to make all the working drawings, and he was going to get the approvals, and he was also given the interiors contract because somewhere the client must have felt that he shouldn't feel left out. So there was something for him to design as well. Now, HDR, sorry, maybe I'm diverting from your question, but let me just, it's a funny story, I would say. HDR, who was a very big firm, I mean, there were 1,000 people, 1,000 architects working under them, spread all over the US. They felt, why do you need an Indian architect? When we are doing such big projects, we can do the whole thing. The local architect thought, why do we need that American architect and an Indian architect? I can design the whole thing. Anyway, I'm doing the interiors and, I could do the whole thing. And I, of course, with just 1 or 2 people in my office, didn't know what to say. So, but fortunately, I was approached before the other two were appointed. And before they came into the picture, I mean, my sketch design was ready and, everything seemed to fit in well. And the client was convinced that, yes, this is what we want to do. So before they could, find problems in this drawings, I mean, it was already approved, and finally they had to sort of fit in their things within the building which I had designed. So, so it sort of connects with the first question you had asked, because the requirements and everything was in place at that time. So yes, so it was, I mean, it's very tricky when you work with a great architect, I would say, somebody who's so imposing and so famous like Charles, well, people start comparing your work and they think, oh, it's, he's using the same square windows or he's using same elements, but it's not about elements. It's about, like I said, it's the experience in the building which you have to learn from Correa's, buildings designed by Correa. So if you see any of his buildings, or if you see any of the drawings, just look at the plans. They look so simple. I mean, they look like as if he could have designed it in few hours, any of those buildings, but they're just simple courtyards, and maybe the courtyards are placed together and there's several courtyards. But it took months to reach there. It wasn't that simple. And there were like hundreds of drawings before they actually, finalized, before the scale was finalized, with the proportions were finalized. So there's a lot of effort to reach the stage what we finally see at the end of the thing. So that is, those are the things which you pick up from these great architects. And of course, along with that comes a few, things which reflect in your project. But here it was intentional, and it was intentional in the sense it had to look like it was part of the building, as if it was always there when, the research center was designed. And yet it is so different when you step into that building. So those are the challenges which I had, and sort of I could manage to sort out.
Yeah. So I would like to start with sharing an experience when I got a chance to hear you for the first time in December, somehow in Rajkot, which one would have never thought that we could hear you there. And to hear you again bring certain other kinds of things. It mind churns the same thing in a different way now. So I would really suggest that that's really a good thing to do. And what I think right now today is that day we were talking about scale, and you really had some interesting answers today as well. Today you mentioned few books and also mentioned a book to not be a Bible, rather be a bylaws. So which made me think that there is something which is ideal design and something which is appropriate. And when being in Ahmedabad, jumping between projects of both of these persons, like from a campus to a ashram, one would obviously at all the times think that this is so appropriately sitting in the context, in the time, for the people, in all the tangible and intangible aspects. And so I would like to ask both of you about what do you think of this? What do you think of this, particularly like for working with him and working by yourselves both? Thanks.
Yeah, first of all, I mean, architecture is not like math where you can say this is ideal. I mean, there's no, I mean, it can be designed in so many ways, any building, and there is nothing like this is the perfect solution. So probably it has to be more appropriate to the site. That's probably the correct way to look at it. Um, and once, of course, you get the right solution and you may ensure that all the requirements are taken care of, then that is the building which is, that becomes ideal for the client. So, I suppose that's the way to go about it. And this is, of course, probably not exactly picked up from Korea's office, but this is probably the only thing any architect should, do when he's practicing. Charles, of course, worked extremely hard to get the right proportion, the right scale, and everything. Apart from, of course, trying to fit in a lot of things into it, and he of course kept thinking about it constantly. I mean, it wasn't that when he went home he forgot about what we were doing in the office after that. But he used to come back early morning, 9:30 sharp in the office, and he said, "Oh, you know what? I got up at 5 o'clock, and I thought of this." And imagine, like, we had worked till 11, and we were ready to impress him, and then he comes up with another idea which is completely different from what we was talking about the previous night. So he was constantly thinking about how to make this perfect, how to make this work. And probably there comes a time when you realize that, okay, now this is it where you should stop, and you shouldn't go beyond that. And that's extremely important because that stage has to come quite early in, when you're designing. The moment you know that, okay, this is it and there's nothing more to be done, that's the best thing that can happen. If you're constantly thinking and you're constantly getting new ideas and you're till the end, I mean, you'll never be satisfied, and probably it will all show in your building, So you have to know where to draw the line, and it's best that you reach that line pretty fast.
I think he has sorted it out. Yeah.
This is something that I've been sort of wanting to ask somebody ever since I was a student. Is there a story behind the square window?
Yes.
Because
I think touched on it. I touched on it. Charles had these three primordial aspects. One is ritualistic pathway. That was absolutely, it was in there. So any of these projects, if you see, there will be always a meandering path. That one. Then the key was, probably his form follows climate. Yes. Form follows climate. That was his first dictum. And then the ritualistic pathway. And then came the square. So within square, everything is possible. Square and the circle, the square gives birth to 9 square. That's what he talked about, that it gave birth to the 9 squares, and that is where the whole cosmic aspect is. So square is a primordial form as per him, and square and the circle, as Kapila Vatsayanas, also has mentioned, that we have these only two forms, universal. It's a square, there is a circle. Then you divide, you join, and elongate them, whatever. So is that satisfies you? Okay. So we primarily design squares and circles as an architects.
सचिन सर म्हणजे आता मागच्या क्वेश्चनमध्येच बोलले की आपल्याला ती लाईन ड्रॉ करणं खूप इम्पॉर्टंट असतं डिझाईनमध्ये. तर मग ती लाईन ड्रॉ कशी करायची किंवा त्याच्यासाठी
Yeah, so it's not a line, physical line which you draw. It's basically comes from English.
थांबायचं कुठे असं.
So they, I mean, it comes from experience. Experience in the sense when you work under somebody, you pick up from that office. So it's best that you work under somebody for a long time. Like I worked for 8 years, in Korea's office before I started my practice. Similarly, I mean, Sunil has worked for 6 years and more than that before he started his practice. So that's very important. I mean, so don't jump and, when you're out of college, I mean, there's so many things you need to unlearn, like I said, very clearly. I mean, and also learn. So, and I'm still learning after 24 years of practice. So there's no end to how much you can learn. So it's best that at least invest first few years, at least 5 years, work under somebody who's good, whom you believe is good, because you definitely need some guru to tell you, what is right and what is wrong. After that, when you start doing your own work, projects, I mean, you'll start making mistakes, of course, but slowly you will know, okay, this is not required, this is required, this is how you should approach any topic or any project. And then you know that this is where I have to stop. So it's not a line which you can see, but it's very important line aspect which you need to understand and sense it, once you have that experience. So that comes from experience.
Hello, sir. Sir, I've stayed in Bhopal for quite some time basically, and I saw one building of Korea. It is very close to Vidhan Bhavan. It is called Paryavas Bhavan, but somehow we have not read much about that building, and it's a phenomenal building. So I would like to know if there is any experience related to that building.
Which building is this?
Paryavas Bhavan. Not Bharat Bhavan. No. It's called Paryavas Bhavan. It's very close to Vidhan Bhavan. It's on the same road.
I haven't heard of that.
So it's designed by Korea actually, and not many people know.
Korea knows?
Yeah. I don't know. But I've seen that building and it's phenomenal. Sir, I asked the same question in Charles Correa Foundation also, and they told me that some of the buildings, they are not published or they are not well known.
No,
I don't know why.
They say there is no such building.
Sir,
There is no such building.
It is there. Sir, there is a plank also
No,
written.
building is there.
But there is a plank also written on that building that it is designed by Charles Correa. Yeah.
Really?
Correct.
Rajat, माहिती आहे?
Yeah. Yeah, and there are courtyards also in that building, and same sense of architecture basically. Yeah. Yes.
Lot of Koreas are there that way. So.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's very easy to, but you can't get a soul of Korea in it. That's what a lot of people try that. So the focus is, you should not copy as such, but take what the philosophy is all about and try to imbibe that. I think Mr. Vishwas Rao will, would voice the same opinion. That try and get the philosophy, and those squares and circles which you see here, they don't come easy as Sachin just explained. It's years of working on them, and then it just finally appears, Like I was talking about a small incident that client said, don't change. They're convinced. So you got to be convinced that you are doing something good and not copy as such, But I'll go and see that building.
Actually, one more thing I wanted to do, I have to call Rajiv Vishwas Rao. It will be unfair on my part. He's right here in Pune, and so many years. So all three of you can stand here. We can give standing ovation to all three of them.
Thank you so much. On behalf of Road, we would like to present a small token of love. I would request Yashoda to please. Thank you so much. And here we are at the end of this exceptional week. I would say it was a kind of a journey for all of us, I would say. I would like to take a moment here to mention all the people who have been a part of this. We at Sir said there are many people who are working with road, and we have many well-wishers who have helped us financially. They have boosted our morale. So I would like to, I won't take their names because they wouldn't like it, but I would really like to say thank you and be with us always. I would also like to mention the people who have handled the technical part, our Mandapala, our sound guy, our screen guy. So thank you so much. Yes, in road we always want to keep meeting, knowledge sharing, and having discussions, and having good time with all good people is our only motto. We do not have any other motive other than that. So let's keep meeting. Let's keep sharing ideas, and keep sharing knowledge as always. So thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being with Road. So we'll keep meeting. Thank you. If you are not following us on Instagram and Facebook, so go there. We are there. We are updating whatever activities we are having. So we'll keep meeting. Thank you. Good night.